700 cases in one day, 796 actually to be precise, very close to 800. Let's hear what the CAS Massimo Ngangi had to say about it.
We have 796 people having tested positive for this disease. And this brings the total number of positive cases in the country to 15,601.
So gentlemen, this is going downhill, even though the numbers are going up. It seems to be going downhill, the whole thing. I mean, we have had numbers that we have not seen in a very long time. I mean, do you remember when we were here, I think it must have been at the end of April, and we were talking about 396 or thereabouts. I think it was end of May, in fact. And so now we are at 15,000, very close now to 16,000. And the number seems to be rising. Francis, the president was supposed to have had a meeting tomorrow to sort of assess where we are and probably, as they said, review the impact of the easing of restrictions that we saw on the 6th of this month. That meeting was postponed. Maybe we start there. Why did the president go ahead with the meeting that was supposed to happen tomorrow?
I look at it more on when the meeting was scheduled. After the postponement. The meeting comes up on Monday, and that is the very same day that the president is supposed to tell the country tell the country what we will be doing or where we are heading, basically, after the last session or the last meeting that and the last address that he gave to the nation. Quite a number of things have happened. The number of infections has risen comparatively since the country was reopened. The number of cases has basically increased compared to the number of infections we saw between March and June. And that is a worrying trend. And also the question of state of preparedness in those counties. Virtually almost every county now has COVID-19 cases. But the question is, how prepared are these counties in terms of dealing with a likely surge if it happens? And talking to a few governors, they tell you they don't have the resources. And then there's also a disconnect because the government tells us it disbursed 5 billion shillings to counties. So was the money disbursed or was it not? And if the counties received the money, what did they do with that money? So those are some fundamental questions that when the meeting happens on Monday, we hope there will be answers to. But the state of preparedness in counties, in my estimation, doesn't look very well. And statistics don't lie. I'm looking at the county's burden, and you saw that story by Sam Gituku earlier on. The number of infections so far is at 15,601. Nairobi has 9,151. Mombasa, 1,873. Kiambu, 970. Busia, 668. Kajiado, 780. Machakos, 569. Migori, 249. Nakuru, 241. And Uasin Gishu, 191. The total number of infections since the country reopened is 7,715. That should worry all of us.
What else should worry us, Joe and Francis, is for a very long time in this country, we have had millions of doubting Thomases who are asking, have you seen anybody who's been affected by COVID-19? Has anyone you know died of COVID-19? And I think this week, we all as a country, and here the Royal Media Services family, saw someone we know die, Papa Shirandula. I think we have some good sound of the legend here.
Papa Shirandula. Mimi kwa majina najulikana kama Wycliffe Wilson, Willipofosi, Shirandula, Toti Atitua, Toti Nyungula, Welcome City Town, original mwenyewe, for example.
Papa Shirandula is no more. He was buried on Monday. Quite a transition, Joe. This was a legend. In the same league as the likes of the late Mzee Ojwang, no less.
I mean, it was amazing. I mean, look at how he easily connected with everybody. You see, the amazing thing about this guy was the fact that he is the kind of person who was so talented that he actually managed to endear himself to the cross-section of the society. So you'd find someone who is doing the kind of jobs that he was doing in his roles, like, like maybe a guard at a gate somewhere, and the CEO of that very company where the guard is opening the gate for. I mean, that is how cross-cutting his appeal was among the people. And he is someone, I think, who's made a real mark on the art scene of Kenya, and he's going to be remembered for many years to come. I mean, he's one of those people who I think will be remembered as having mainstreamed local production in the mindset of many Kenyans, because remember, the likes of Ojuang and Makayai, they did their bit, but there's a sense in which it didn't touch the whole country in the manner in which I think we have seen now local art being appreciated in a broader section of society. And I think that people like Papa Shirandula, without taking away anything from the lot that came before him, who would actually be remembered for.
Francis, Charles Bukeko became very synonymous with the Citizen brand. And in a conversation with our MD, Wachira Waruru, who is very familiar with the foundation of the show itself, Papa Shirandula, or Charles Bukeko, was identified from a show called Malund, a movie, actually, a local movie. Remember, he was the watchman there, and Wachira told me about the transition from that to, hey, how about you having a show that is about you as a watchman? And a watchman is a big, big feature in our national life, Francis. So Charles Bukeko and the Citizen brand.
Absolutely. And so big was Papa Shirandula that many people who met him required no introduction whatsoever. Actually, the identity in terms of the brand Papa Shirandula and Citizen TV was hapa kwa hapa, as we say mtaani. And it goes to tell us that this COVID-19 situation is real. So real it is that somebody we all know, somebody that requires no introduction, has passed on. And the statistics are also worrying, that initially people were saying, this COVID-19 is story. It's a Nairobi thing. But we hear people who are dying up country, people we know. Initially the discussion was, who do you know has right. COVID-19? Now it is, who do you know has passed on as a result of COVID-19 related complications. And I'm looking at the statistics in the last, since July 6th, 103 people have passed on as a result of COVID-19. 71,764 tests have been done in that period, and 7,715 have turned positive. That shows you about 10.7% positivity rate. That's very scaring. And probably there's a discussion out there that the more we test, the more positive cases we get. And also the question of whether the guidelines that have been issued by the ministry are working or are not working. Even as we are being told that the worst is yet to come.
But you see, Francis, I think what people need to recognize, I mean, before we were talking about examples from Italy, we saw New York was very bad. We've seen scenes from the South America and that sort of thing. And now, closer home, South Africa, I mean, 572 deaths in the last 24 hours. That surely ought to concern us, that this thing is moving closer, and we need to take great care. It's not something that we just see on TV anymore. It's something that actually is now very present. In fact, I was speaking to some people, some highly placed people in the ministry, and they're saying, well, this thing is everywhere. I mean, you look at any neighborhood right now, wherever you live, it doesn't matter where, including even those counties where they're saying there's nobody yet. It's just that they haven't tested, but it's now literally in every neighborhood. I mean, that just means we just have to be extremely careful, Linus.
It is that basic, Joe. It is that basic. It is real. We can't deny it anymore. I mean, we have Jeff Koinange. Let's listen.
Two days, really, since you got your results back. I mean, you look good, but how are you feeling?
You know, Vicky, it's funny. I really feel good. I am asymptomatic according to the tests, which means that I'm positive but showing no symptoms. The only thing that I'm showing is a lack of taste. I've lost a bit of lack of taste. It keeps going and coming back. But all the other symptoms, zero. And this is the thing with this virus, Vicky. It attacks the bodies differently, depending on individuals. So you may think you have it. The minute you get any one of the symptoms, that's why you should get tested. So, I feel great. I've been in self-isolation. My family, thank God, my wife and son, they're negative, which is really good.
And our own Jeff Koinange, we are very, very glad indeed that you are feeling great, and we are wishing you a quick recovery. It can be more real than that. Our own Stephen Leto in the newsroom also nursing an asymptomatic case of COVID-19. But gentlemen, I want us to go to the next thing, which is, despite all this, we all get to know all about the people that contract COVID-19, but there is bad manners. Johnson Sakaja, senator for Nairobi, was arrested not very many days ago. I think we have the video here.
On Friday, it was not any official duty. I was not oversighting. I was not looking at what they're doing. I was on the wrong on that one. And I agree. And I'm sorry for that. I apologize to Kenyans. I resign from the ADO committee on COVID, which I've been chairing. We have done a lot of work so far. I support the work that the government is doing, and the officers, I think they're doing a good job across the country. But because of that responsibility and the example that I need to set, I have this morning officially written to the Speaker about that.
Francis, did it surprise you that this happened in the political class?
Not at all. Actually, Linus and Joe, the breaking or the non-compliance of the curfew guidelines and this COVID-19 protocol has been so rampant that no one seemed to take responsibility for the misbehavior, the bad manners. There ought to have been a similar apology from the political leaders who congregated in Isinya, because they were not essential service providers when they moved from various counties up to Kajiado County. There has not been a similar apology from politicians. We have seen convening political rallies and meetings all over, some even having to be tear gassed by the police, and at the same time the police being accused of double standards in application of these restrictions, or in ensuring this compliance with the COVID-19 guidelines. So, interestingly, Senator Sakaja apologized, very rare for the politicians, and I hope he meant it, and that he was taken to court and fined 15,000 shillings. Similar thing happening to Kasipul MP Charles Ongondo Were. I hope more politicians will now realize how serious this situation is. And the fact also, Joe and Linus, is that some of our politicians have also turned positive for COVID-19. Not that they shouldn't get it, because anybody can get it, as we were told by Mutahi Kagwe, the CS for Health. But there's a level of responsibility that is higher on their part than on any other person, because the moment ordinary citizens see the political leaders and people they hold in high esteem breaking these guidelines with impunity, then the question is, so we too can.
I think there was something also noteworthy there. I mean, the fine that he got, I mean, whereas the courts say, well, that is pretty close to the maximum sentence that we can give. I think the maximum is 20,000. So they said first offender and therefore 15 and all that. But I think that at a time like this, there ought to be someone who had looked at the law and said, how do we make this actually painful? Because if someone does this sort of thing, and I'm sure whatever was going on in that club must have cost way more than 15,000 shillings. So if that ends up being the fine, then it's not punitive enough. I think there has to be a relook, a rethink of how we punish disobedience, or is it rebellion in the face of what is really a national health emergency as we know it.
But you see, Joe, the law is, everyone is equal under the law, regardless status. They would argue that it's not about how much I'm able to pay, but I should be treated the same as any other offender.
Yeah, and Linus and Joe, I also look at what we are dealing with currently, because all we are talking about are numbers. You know, state of preparedness hasn't been a very serious discussion, so to say. And when you see the level of impunity in terms of how, you know, these laws are being violated, these guidelines are being violated, not just by the political leaders, but by ordinary people. I mean, we've done stories on various bars that remain open many months after that order that, I mean, drinking or places of, I mean, bars are closed. But, I mean, it's all over. I mean, we see on social media videos doing rounds of place A, place B, where people have turned their vehicles into small bars, and they congregate in areas, and they drink from their car boots and so on and so forth. So there's probably need to deal with these issues more seriously, and there ought to be, uniformity in application of these laws, such that one county does not, for example, ban drinking or sale of alcohol, but the neighboring county, it's business as usual. I mean, what will stop somebody from county A boarding a matatu to go to county B to purchase alcohol because that county has not banned the sale? So if there's a guideline, then it ought to be applied uniformly. If you're saying no drinking, then it should be applicable across board. If you're saying no political meetings, no social gatherings, then it should be applied across board. Otherwise, when there seems to be double standards or, non-uniformity in application of these guidelines, then therein lies a problem.
All right.